eventually, if you've got a good enough idea, somebody will actually buy it. So that's what keeps you hoping.
Welcome to Create Up with Will Ennis. That's me. This is a podcast on leveling up both creatively and in life. My guest today is Robin Ingle, a Canadian entrepreneur and specialist in high-risk insurance, travel security, healthcare, and a whole lot more. He has so many companies. And today, we're going to be talking about the art of creating value, seeing where there's a need and providing a solution. And Robin is a master at this. One of the companies that we talk about is his security company. And by security, I don't mean like the bouncer at Sneaky D's. I mean like global security, providing protection for communities in foreign countries that are at risk, helping stop crimes like human trafficking, things like that. I really love this talk, and I think you will too. And if you do, please share it with your friends. Now, without further ado, here is my talk with the ingenious Robin Ingle. Enjoy. Robin Ingle, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you, Will. This will be fun.
Yeah, thanks. It's a pleasure to have you because you're really a guest like no other in the sense of the entrepreneurial sense. You're really would it be safe to say you're a serial entrepreneur?
Yeah, it sounds dangerous though, doesn't it? That you could take that with murder at the same time.
I was thinking Cheerios. I was thinking more along the lines of Cheerios.
Oh, okay. Cereal. All right. Very good.
But you've done high-risk insurance and healthcare and travel security. You have a film production company.
Yeah, technology, anything you can think of, I've done. So I'm a little bit of a chameleon. I have a restless mind. That's the problem.
Yes, I totally agree with you. Like I like to jump from creative project to project, whether it's podcast, music, acting. And I think a lot of creatives have that in common. There's sort of that chameleon aspect, like you're saying. And when I was researching you, the thing I thought was really cool was just right at the beginning, I saw that you opened a pizzeria when you were 17. Is this
Yes.
true?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, that's because, do you ever see that Jim Carrey movie where he has to say yes to everything?
Yeah, yes, man.
Yeah. Okay, so that's part of my problem. If I think I can do something with it, so as my family actually did property development, and my brother called me and said, do you want to go to university? Because I was accepted to do arts program at York. Or to OCAD. And I said, restaurant might be fun. Pizzeria might be fun. And it was actually a good pizzeria because it was right next door to the nurses' residence for Toronto Hospital. So it was a great place when you're 17 years of age to have a pizzeria. Yeah.
Wow. So the pizzeria was sort of like your real life business university. Like that was your education there.
Totally. Yeah.
So was the property just came into your family had the property, or you sought out the property? Like, I'm just really
No, what happens is restaurants don't tend to last very long. And obviously we've seen that during COVID,
Oh yeah.
Unfortunately, but restaurants don't last very long. And when you're buying properties, you end up with restaurants that are leasing space and they go out of business. So I very quickly, as sort of a kick-ass kid, I thought I could do these things, and I ended up running a restaurant, but I also ended up being a receiver for my family, taking over restaurants that went out of business and things like that.
Wow.
So I learned a lot about the restaurant and hospitality industry, which I think has been with me all my life, because when you're in a restaurant, when you're a wait staff, when you're behind a bar, you've got to deal with that customer right away. You're going to know whether they don't like you or they like you immediately.
Yeah. Instant feedback.
Yeah, it's great feedback. And in business, you can be isolated from your customer, so you don't have that personal connection. But in the hospitality industry, you do. Like right away, The same as an actor. When you're on a stage and the audience boos, doesn't clap, But when they start clapping and they get up for an encore, right? You get that energy. So yeah.
Absolutely. Do you find it's hard with some of your more recent businesses to get that direct feedback? Is there often a lag that kind of frustrates you or anything like that?
That's an interesting question. Because I think in all of the businesses that I've got, that I've been involved with, there is a longer sales cycle. And a lot of time what you're doing, and especially the businesses that I've been involved in, you're creating a new market. So you're creating something that didn't technically exist before. So you're having to educate the population, the consumer, you're having to educate the distributors, you're having to get people to believe in you. And that's a hard one. You know, you've got to be patient. You've got to grow a thick skin, but be empathetic at the same time, because you have to be authentic. You know, I think that's one thing that's happened to show all businesses with the explosion of social media and the internet, that you've got to be authentic. You've got to be true to your word. But I've always thought that, you know, you've got to be straightforward. You know, we started travel insurance in Canada. My family did that since 1946, but it wasn't a big business. And when the government started cost shifting in the late 80s and early 90s, so they wouldn't protect you outside of Canada when you travel, I went back into my family business, and I had to go out, and we had to build teams to go out and educate Canadians, you know, go to the media, go do all this kind of stuff. And that was hard because you knew you needed the product. You knew you had to tell them. You had to inform them about it, but it was a process. So, you know, I think you'll learn that eventually, if you've got a good enough idea, that somebody will actually buy it. So that's what keeps you hoping.
Nice. So it starts with a great idea, and it also sounds like it's for your style. There's an empathetic approach when you're creating a business. You know, working with others, sort of listening to the customer, dealing with people, and knowing that. And I guess in the social media age, knowing that whatever you do can be recorded and seen, and it's kind of, you're kind of held to a certain accountability when you're running a business, especially on a level like you are.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
How does that feel? I mean, do you feel like maybe even entrepreneurs in this day and age are kind of in the spotlight? Do you feel there's almost like not just your companies are a brand, but Robin Ingle, is Robin Ingle a brand?
Yes, and I've used that. So, for example, when I was talking about travel insurance, because the name of the company was Ingle, I could go out and I could say things where if somebody represented a big conglomerate, a big insurer, they couldn't. It wasn't their name on the line. So I had more cachet by doing that. But at the same time, every business that I've been involved in has some capacity to help people, to educate people, to direct people, to guide people. And I think that's helped me be more authentic. And also because I'm not well, I say this, but that could be I could be very biased, but I'm not the typical corporate geek. I don't like the way economics is played globally. I don't like the big company syndrome. I don't like where organizations and people create this, you know, less than 1% that control 99% of the assets in the world. I said, that's a bad thing. And I can tell you from the security business, because in the 80s and 90s, I was in counterterrorism and high-end security globally. And one of the things I saw was a loss of hope in people. And I saw the divide between the rich and the poor and how that affects us. It affects the environment because people don't care as much. It affects everything around us. And I think there's got to be more people, more corporate entities that have to be better at dealing with communities, you know, giving back more.
Yeah, I can get behind that for sure. I wanted to dive into the counterterrorism work you were doing in the past. Like, what countries were you operating out of, and what did it entail?
Well, I'm Canadian, so I operated out of Canada, but with the complete authority of the Canadian government, the US government, the UK government, where we did things. And basically, providing solutions globally to civil unrest, terrorism issues, criminal activity. So providing both the intelligence operations, the equipment, the specialized equipment. So satellite transmission devices having to be brought into different countries, cross borders, because we had populist movements taking over, and being able to provide services to communities who were disenfranchised by political entities or by criminal activity, and also dispatching personnel who could do close protection work, could also do recovery, going in to bring out aid workers, for example, or helping with human trafficking issues.
That's tremendous.
Yeah. So, and part of it there is because, I'm a bit of a technology geek.
Yeah.
So I loved learning about everything from weapons to computers early on, to listening devices, creating unique Q products. And we did that. We had actually back in the late 80s and early 90s, we had a facility in Mississauga that was underneath the Silk Flower Company. We had a drive-in area. You could bring a tractor trailer in. We could outfit vehicles. We had a laboratory area. We had a dojo where we trained personnel.
Oh my God, that's just like James Bond. And did you say it was
Exactly.
under a silk flower store?
Yeah.
So that was like the front, and then behind that was all the other stuff.
It was all down. It was down in the basement area, but it was 14,000 square feet plus a big drive-in area.
So people would go by thinking that's the silk flower store. I'm going to pick up some roses.
Yeah, they couldn't see us. Yeah.
Wow, that is very much like a movie. That is really cool. I remember one time I was at a costume shop in Toronto, and I went into the back room thinking it was more costumes, and it was actually it was for Greenpeace. They had like a training grounds for like secret little protests they were going to do, like scaling buildings. And I thought that was so cool. I was just a kid. I thought that was so cool though. But this sounds like 10 times more elaborate. And I just think that's so cool that it was under a business like that. Because you would think the government, wouldn't do that. But that's actually very interesting.
Well, the government did do it. It was private. But we worked with governments. And I never did anything that was illegal or anything against government policy. But I did refuse to do work because of that. What I was telling you before is there was a lot of things where I didn't think that either government agencies or individuals or even corporate groups actually had thought out what they were trying to do.
Mm-hmm. Did any of them come from an ethical place that you questioned? Was it ever the ethics of?
Many times. Yeah.
Even Canadian government or not so much?
I think every security apparatus in the world, if you build something and it's really cool and it gets information and they don't even know what to do with it, they want it.
Yeah.
They want it and they don't know what to do with it. And the funny part about it is we and this is actually not funny, but it's the irony of the whole thing, is that there are no men in black suits. There are no groups that know everything. Mm-hmm. There are no organizations that control the world. Absolutely, I know that. I've been there at every level. Mm-hmm. And the worst part about it is that we cannot underestimate stupidity. And a lot of times that we get into problems, including COVID and the pandemic, is because large organizations, groups, and governments do not prepare. They go for the quick answer, the quarterly report, the profit statement, the votes, rather than saying, look, pandemics and localized epidemics are going to happen. They happened many, many times before. So take precautions, be careful. It's part of the disaster recovery and disaster management process.
Mhm.
Why don't you have all these things? Why don't you have this process? Why do you get rid of building vaccination capability? These kind of things. It's just,
Yeah.
that's part of our problem, is that human nature is short term.
It's funny. I think Bill Gates was saying like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, talking
Yeah.
about needing to have these security measures for vaccines. Specifically, he was talking about pandemics, and yeah, it seems like he's a bit of a fortune teller there, because a lot of us weren't prepared. A lot of countries weren't prepared and
we
still aren't.
everybody that does crisis management, resilience talks. I've done many of them in the last 20 years.
Mhm.
Healthcare, pandemics, epidemics are one of the top 10, always.
Yeah.
So, and it's not, not biological warfare. It's not anything else. It's basically, there are things that grow around us, grow in us, grow on us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to happen. And the more we encroach on forests, subtropical environments, the more we push, the more we don't take care of the environment, it does affect. And we will get more of this. So I just, this is me evangelizing, but it is, I've seen the worst. And I've, it's something where people have to wake up, and it doesn't take a young Swedish girl to get out there and complain.
Right.
We know, right? So
yeah, we do know, and it's just that question of values and whatnot, and taking action and executing. I wanted to ask you a big picture question in regards to security and just the world at large. I'm just kind of spitballing a question here, and it's pretty big, but I was going to say, overall, security in the world since the 80s, do you think we are overall becoming a safer world, or does security ebb and flow with, political regimes and generations?
That's a really good question. It's a very thoughtful question. Security in different ways is much better than it has been 100 years ago, 50 years ago. But we do have other security issues. And the economic divide in the world is a problem. Migration caused by economic issues and environmental issues is a problem. Populist movements globally, and also the rise of more and more dictatorial governments, political groups, is a problem. And because of that, you're also getting this kind of racial divide, which is a big problem. You get the north-south divide. When we look at vaccine distribution, it's really a north-south issue. The southern part of the world is not getting vaccines. And the ones they did get, the Sinovacs and Sinopharm, are not sufficient. So what's happening is the first world is taking all the vaccines. The problem is, like any other kind of virus that's out there, we're going to have a problem because the people in the south will spread it to the people in the north, and variants will come, and there'll be more. So what we have to do is start looking at how we become more equal, egalitarian at how we provide the services. And we have to get to a point where, and it may not be, and this is controversial, it may not be democratic, but it can't be dictatorial. So you need a process where people can make informed decisions and choices, but you have to educate those people too. One of the worst things that's happened in the last 5 years is a lack of understanding of science, lack of understanding of the world, a reliance on social media and third parties that have no credibility. Like the conspiracy theories are rampant, and people don't have critical thinking. And that is a problem. Like, it's not to say you can't be, a right-leaning person, a left-leaning person, a libertarian, who cares? But you gotta understand things. And you've got to learn what's going on, and you've got to, one thing I've done is done a lot of speaking engagements with international students and schools, universities, and colleges. And travel is interesting. People ask about, well, should I be worried about a terrorist attack in London? And I go, no, because that's a problem, but it's a localized problem in one little area and only affects a small amount of people. The real risk to travel is not traveling, because when we don't travel, we stay insular and we don't see the other people in this world, and that we're more similar than we are different. You know, there's more similarity between a person in Toronto and a person in Cape Town than there is difference. But what do? We always look at the difference, right? So we need to understand that we are all part of this earth and we've all got to do something. And I'm not religious. I'm not anything else. I say it from the way it is. When you think about things logically, understand what's going on, be critical about your thinking, and understand that, you know, we're all have the same capability, but maybe we don't have the same chances, right, in life.
Yeah. And like the environment shapes people tremendously, and we often don't sort of realize it. And when you go from one environment to another, environments can educate you. An experience or an environment can educate you like the way a book cannot. You know what I mean? Like a trip can change you mentally, physically, emotionally. It's like a full body education.
Yeah, it's like a holistic approach to the whole thing. You're right.
Yeah.
That's a very important thing that everybody's got to do. And this is probably the COVID has been the worst, because it made us more insular.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I wanted to switch gears and touch on the high risk insurance that you do. I don't know. I'm not too familiar with the insurance industry, but traditionally they seem very risk averse. So I was wondering, what was the spirit of being like high risk? You insured astronauts, didn't you? And like mountain climbers, and that's amazing. Like what led you to that?
Yeah, you've obviously been talking to somebody. So yes.
I have my sources.
Yeah, that's true. So it's interesting you said that, because insurers are risk adverse. They become bureaucrats. So what happens is they will insure anything. And you hear this kind of thing, like Lloyd's will insure anything, you know, a dancer's legs, a pianist's fingers. They'll do anything you can do. But the issue is, a lot of times, is they try to create a commodity product, which basically takes care of the standard, whatever that is. And the people that fall outside that standard or want to do something different in life, they have a harder time getting backing for risk. And human beings have a real problem at assessing risk. People will be worried about flying in an airplane because it's a big metal object and it shouldn't fly. Right? So they will not, but it's more risk to travel in a car in the city you live than it is to fly in an airplane. So you have to look at the odds and the risks that's there. So give you an example. If you get someone, and we have a lot of people, Canadians that climb major mountains in the world. And where I was approached by a number of climbers from Alberta that were climbing Mount Everest, for example. A normal insurer would be charging them tens of thousands of dollars for their risk. But when we look at it, these people were training day in and day out. They were climbing with backpacks full of stone in big buildings in Calgary, up the stairs to get their power. They were learning how to deal with high altitude. They brought a physician with them. All of these things. So we could assess that risk because they were doing everything correctly. They were managing and training, and they brought all the right equipment. The other problem comes, though, is when you get people that don't do that. They create a problem. So Mount Everest, for example, today, well, pre-COVID, because Nepal has a lot of problems with COVID right now. But pre-COVID, you had tourists going on. You know, so you had people that never did this kind of thing, were never trained, go up, they're going to have a problem.
The weekend warrior types. Yes,
the weekend warrior types. They think it's like the 50-year-old guy who's been an executive sitting on his ass all the time decides to run a marathon. Okay, big mistake. You can't just do the normal 18-week or 20-week training process. You've got to do much more to get to that point. So you can assess risk. A UN border security person going to Syria to review how border security is, and they're going to be right on the border where that Daesh or ISIS is. You can actually do something about that. You can assess the risk. We had a pile of journalists, for example, and because I've been in the security business, I've got a lot of friends that are journalists that go to places, to war zones. Robert Young Pelton is a friend of mine who wrote the World's Most Dangerous Places books. These guys go to these places and they're talking to all of the combatants on either side, taking photographs. You can turn around and get a really good product for them that covers them and then provide them emergency assistance. It's just understanding who the client is, making sure that you find the right risk-taking process and how much you charge them so you're reasonable. The same thing with Doctors Without Borders. When they're going someplace, there's a lot of organizations that are charitable organizations that the people go with big hearts, but if they're trained correctly, that's the difference. I hope that helps.
No, that does. That opens a lot. And that makes me think of the movie you produced recently with Alain Robert. Speaking of risk-taking, right. I saw My Next Challenge I watched on the weekend. A great movie you guys are doing with your company, Sisu Productions. And I mean, what led you to work with him? And for anybody watching, definitely check it out. It's kind of like the movie Free Solo with Alex Honnold, where the guy's climbing with no ropes, but it's on urban structures. And Alain Robert, just for anybody also listening, he's kind of like the precursor to Alex Honnold. I'm a huge Alex Honnold fan. That's why I'm talking right now. But he's even better than Alex Honnold, according to Alex. And he sort of predates the internet. He's like 70. He's a wild man. Anyway, that is a great film. And I just wanted to start talking about that because that guy, wow.
Sure. Well, first, let me talk about Sisu. So I've got an arts background, which I talked to at the beginning, but, I didn't go to university and complete that. But that's my background. And everything when I was young, that's what I did all the time. So I love the creative side. When I was a little kid, I was a model. I was an actor. I was on stage. I did all these things. Look, I'm the youngest in my family by far, and my parents thought I needed to be out there doing everything. But that's what I like, that creative side of it. And with Sisu, we had a lot of clients that have bought our technology platforms, our Novus Health and Travel Navigator platforms. And the problem was these large clients didn't know how to market them. And the marketing agencies they hired didn't know how to do that. So I went out and I hired some video production, digital media people. We set up an agency and we started doing our own productions. We did commercials, half the price of an agency.
Nice.
High-end quality. We had a lot of the cinematographers working with us work with National Geographic. We had freelance people in different countries, like in Singapore and Laos and Germany, that we could use. So with these people, you also have to let them be creative. So we said, okay, let's start doing documentaries. So we started doing documentaries with people we knew. We did one on a performer who started out as a Muay Thai fighter, had a concussion, ended up getting into circus performing, and now she's gone on to do tons of things. And we started with that. Then we started with another one about a young boxer who her life changed because of boxing, which was really great. And then Alain Robert came around and the French Spider-Man. And I was introduced to him, and a crazy guy. He will climb anything, literally. If you see his Instagram, Alain Robert official, if you see his Instagram, he's on an aircraft and he's climbing the ceiling on the aircraft, and you can see the flight attendants getting nervous. He's anywhere he goes, he climbs stuff. And what was nice about this is that he wants to get to 200 climbs, building climbs. Yeah. And we had the chance to follow him to Manila, and we had to hire local crews because he always gets arrested. And we had to get our one US crew, one Asian crew there with one Manila-based crew. and we had to blend in. We had to set it all up. What was even more bizarre about this, it shut down the financial core of Manila for a period of time because he climbed up this building. And it's also about him, you know, the fact that when our guys were with him at the hotel, he was walking around on the ledge of his balcony in his cowboy boots, talking to them. Like he's totally off the wall. Like he was way up in the air doing this. And what really is a nice thing that came out of this is Alex from Free Solo. Alain Robert was his idol. Because Alain did bigger free solos before anybody did them. Like he was out there doing it, and then he decided to do on buildings, right? So it was great, and we put it together, and Amazon Prime picked it up. A couple of other streaming channels picked it up. We want to do more, but actually, that's a nice lead into why I'm in London. So we want to do more. Yeah.
Oh, well, I have a question. I'm curious about what you're working on now, what the more is. But before that, I had one thought watching the movie that I wanted to ask you about. If Alain fell, you know what I mean? Let's say he fell, and this is his whole life is about this. Like he's willing to put his life on the line. As executive producer, if he fell, would you have released the movie and that's how it ends? Like, what would you be your take on that?
Well, that's an amazing question, because what happened the day before the climb, I got a phone call at 3 a.m. in the morning in Toronto from the on-site producer, and she was crying. And the cinematographer of camera systems that were there, our DOP, he was panicking because they just realized, what the heck if he falls? What are we going to do? Right? So first of all, we had insurance on him. He has a young family in Bali, Indonesia. He has an older family in France, but he has a young family. And our people were legitimately worried at that time because they saw him doing some really off the wall stuff, like walking around that balcony with cowboy boots on. You know, way up in the air in Manila, taking chances, but he really knows his stuff, and he is in total shape. It's strange, but at his age, he is in really good shape. He knew what he was doing. So I talked to the producer and I said, look, you knew this could happen. Why are you worried now? And saying, well, he could fall. I said, okay, does he want to go? Go and film him now. Tell him you don't want him to go. Is he going to go if you say no? And he said, no, he's going to go. He's going to go whether we film it or not. And we made the decision, look, if he fell, we would talk about his life. We would go back to his family and get more in depth, go talk to his family in France. You know, why does somebody risk his life to that degree constantly? He's doing it constantly. And is it adrenaline rush? Like what is, and I think that's the second part we needed to do. We didn't do as much as we wanted on that. We wanted to delve into what's the goal? Why are you trying to do this? And you'll see he wears these jackets that say dead men's fingers on it. He's got these things. So he's got this real push to do this. So it is an interesting character review that we need to do. We got to go a little bit deeper into that.
I thought he said some cool stuff about his character where he was like trying to find his thing when he was young. And he's like, he kind of talks about how he felt like he was like ugly or whatever. And he's like, then I found climbing. It was kind of my thing. And I was like, oh, that was kind of cool to hear him say all that. Like, but there's probably so much more like, well, why would you do this life risking thing? And, give your wife all that stress.
A lot of it, he was driven, like he is driven. And I agree. He did have body image issues. He felt he was bullied when he was young. He took this up and he became the best at it. And that differentiated him in the world because he became the best at it. Like he goes to Dubai and they hire him to go up the Burj. The Mission Impossible stuff, he did it beforehand, and he actually showed some of the stunt people what to do, right? So you start looking at that. That's a really cool part of it. Yeah.
Absolutely. I recommend anybody check out that film. It's so phenomenal. What brings you to London? What are you working on now?
Well, my partner is in the film industry. So JD has a company called Dream More Films, and she started this company a couple years ago, but she's been an actor, stunt woman for a number of years. She's been in movies like Ready Player One, Fast and the Furious, and different Guardians of the Galaxy, in different parts in it. And she wanted more women-focused parts, women-directed, produced parts. So now she's doing 2 shorts. One of them is sponsored by major British film institute. She's got a group of women together, women director. So yeah, doing well. She's got a number of scripts that she's produced that are being reviewed by major companies for both television and theatrical release. So it's kind of exciting being around this creative engine and watching it produce. And I get to say a little bit on the side to help influence, which is good too.
Oh, cool. Well, you guys are a good match for each other, because I feel like you're both 2 very creative people.
Thank you. Well, I think so, but you never know. You just got to keep working on that every day, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Robin, I don't want to take more of your time. I thought this was great. I learned an absolute lot, and it's just a pleasure to hear about, your travels and everything you've done. Do you have any final words for the episode?
No, but you know what? I really like that you're doing this. It's a great idea. I love the podcast side of it, where you can interview people and talk about their backgrounds. I think a lot of people out there are hungry just to hear about regular people. What's happening? Why did you get into acting, for example? What drove you to that? That's an interesting thing, because there's so many people that are sitting doing the day-to-day, and they've always thought about doing something else.
Yeah.
But they don't know how to do it. And I know acting is not great all the time, because sometimes it's going to be a desert out there because you don't have any work, and then other times you're going to get work and it's going to be great. But there's a thing that drives you, and people need to know about that. That's a huge benefit.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. Guys, check out Sisu Productions. Check out, what was your partner's
Dream More Films.
Dream More Films.
Yeah.
And again, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, Will. Be happy to talk with you.
All right, so that's the show. I want to thank Robin Ingle for coming out, and thank you for reflecting back on some of your accomplishments and sharing your mindset with us. And I just want to reiterate to everyone listening, the film Robin produced about Alain Robert is really good. It's called My Next Challenge, and it's by Sisu Productions. That's SISU Productions. You can find it on Amazon Prime, Apple TV, Google Play, and Alain Robert is an absolute rock star. Imagine Keith Richards climbing the CN Tower with bare hands and no ropes. That's as close a comparison as I can make. All right. Have a great week, everybody. Stay safe, stay free. Peace.